Okay, so well, let's pivot then, because you're right. That could be a whole other show.
Yeah.
All right, so then this moment comes. Bob Nardelli, the board, they decide they're going to part. The board says, Frank,
Yeah.
you're the guy.
Yeah.
All right, so now I want to go back into time, and you think about the first 6 months in that role as CEO. What were some of your key priorities, if you can remember? What were some of the things you really tried to do to onboard as a new CEO, given where Home Depot was at that time?
Right. So to set a little context, first off, as I said, I wasn't thinking that I was going to be the CEO. And the same comment could be made for the other 350,000 people at Home Depot. They had no clue who I was, what I was about. What they knew of me was not very positive, which is I didn't have a lot of retail experience. I was from GE and I was from a lawyer, and I was a lawyer. So those are kind of three big strikes. And I knew enough, having worked in the company for 5 or 6 years before that, I knew I had visions of what needed to change. And one of the stories I tell, it's a true, it happens to be true, is so I'm truly, when the nanosecond before the board called, I had never thought about being the CEO of Home Depot. And in fact, my first comment to the board was, you need to spend a day thinking about this, and I need to spend a day thinking about it, because you might want to get someone with more retail experience than I, or you should think about getting someone with more retail experience than I. And I got to think about whether I can do this job. Obviously, we both decided to go forward. But my son worked in the company at that time. The company had a program for returning military veterans. He had served in Iraq, and he had started out in Colorado, assistant store manager, et cetera, moved up and was running a store in Wilmington, North Carolina. So I gave him a call. This is a long-winded answer, sorry, Brandon, to your question. But I gave him a call and I said, Frank, I got to get on the, we have an internal communications vehicle in the company. I got to get on the TV and talk to our associates. What do you think they're interested in saying? And first off, he couldn't believe that I was going to be the CEO. I had to assure him many times, yep, no, this isn't a prank call. This is true. And he said, well, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you how I start my weekly store meetings. And I said, great. How do you do it? He said, I read from the book, Built from Scratch, which was written by Bernie Marcus and Arthur Blank about the founding of Home Depot. And I said, that's brilliant. I want to do that. It's a great way of establishing one of the things that's important to me, which is to return to some of the culture of the company that Bernie and Arthur founded. And so I'm reading through the book at what's an appropriate way to start. And there's a chapter in the book about the inverted pyramid, where the CEO is at the bottom of the pyramid and the customer and frontline associates are at the top. And I said, that's important, and I'm going to talk about it. And so I did. And for the next 8 years, I tried to lead the company from that perspective and learn what it means, because it's very easy to kind of slough off the inverted pyramid and say, well, nice statement of, humility and servant leadership. But I actually think it is one of the most profound constructs for thinking about business and thinking about leadership that exists. And as I say, I spent 8 years thinking about it.
Yeah. So Frank, I've got another question for you, and then I want to open up to just general leadership lessons that you've had. So I'm curious, part of what I'm hearing in your story underpinning what made you so successful and effective was actually the fact you didn't know as much about the business. So it puts you in a position of being curious, of being humble. So here's my question to you. And I'm just curious, again, there's no right or wrong answer to this, other than what you say. How much do you think how valuable is it for a CEO to kind of have a mastery of that industry, of the business, versus a CEO that maybe has really strong leadership skills as an executive, but maybe doesn't know as much? So they're in more of that position of learner or novice. So I'm not that you were necessarily a novice.
Right. Yeah. No, I got it.
I'd be curious. Where do you land on that? What do you think?
So let me answer it by referencing what I think I learned about the inverted pyramid and why I behaved the way I did, and why I think whether you know the industry you're in or not is actually not that significant. Because, so I'll give a really quick summary. Once you visualize that you as the CEO are at the bottom of this organization and not the top, you realize pretty quickly several things. The first is everything you're doing is uphill. Gravity is not your friend. When I hear about leaders, whether CEOs or heads of functions or whatever, when I hear about people thinking that communication cascades down through the organization, I know right off they don't understand. Because actually organizations really don't care what the boss has to say other than how it directly impacts their work. And gravity is not your friend. You're working against gravity. And that puts a premium on how you communicate, the simplicity of your communication, and how your communication has a theme that can be seen by everybody above as something in their interest that they move forward, and communications move by osmosis and hard work up to an organization. Second, you understand how important listening is, because everything that's important is happening at several removes from you. And if you don't understand how organizations work, one of the important things to understand is organizations are not structured to provide robust information to their leaders. In fact, organizations are structured to prevent that flow of information, particularly bad information.